You're an admiral. You command warships, trained crews, real cannons, and you've been sent out with one job: hunt down a single pirate and end her. You find her fleet. You open fire. And her ships don't slow down. They drive straight into yours until the hulls smash together, and her fighters come pouring over the rail, hundreds of them at once, cleavers, hooks, short blades. They take your deck in minutes. Your crew goes over the side into the water. And then they do the part that breaks you. They don't sink your warship. They run her flag up your mast and sail it away as their own. This keeps happening. Every fleet sent to kill her, she captures and keeps. The harder they hit her, the bigger her navy gets. She has 1,800 ships, 80,000 fighters, the largest pirate fleet that has ever existed anywhere on the planet. And the person doing this is a woman. 10 years before this, she was a prostitute in a brothel. Her name was Shi Yang. Born around 1775 at the very bottom of the heap, into the boat people. Families so low they weren't even allowed to live on land. You were born on the water, you died on the water, and everyone else treated you like dirt. That's her starting line. A poor girl on a boat with no name and no future. By her 20s, she's working in a floating brothel in Canton. And one day, the most feared pirate on the coast walks in. A warlord named Zheng Yi, who commands a huge fleet. He wants her. Now watch what she does. She doesn't get carried off. She negotiates. She tells the most dangerous man on the sea she'll marry him on one condition. She gets half. Half the fleet, half the loot, half the command. In writing. A girl from a brothel looks a warlord in the eye and says, "I'm not going to be your wife. I'm going to be your partner. Sign here." And he signs. So the two of them go to work, and they're terrifyingly good at it. Every smaller gang on the coast gets the same offer. Join us, or we wipe you out. Most join. The ones who don't end up at the bottom of the sea. Pretty soon, it's one giant operation flying 6 colored flags, and she runs the biggest one herself. Then, in 1807, her husband is killed in a storm at sea. And every captain in that fleet has the exact same thought at the exact same moment. The widow steps aside now. One of us takes over. She doesn't step aside. She moves faster than all of them. Overnight, she locks down the fleet's strongest commander, a young fighter named Zhang Bao, and pulls the whole thing under her. By morning, 80,000 pirates take their orders from a woman. And you really did not want to be on the water when her fleet came for you. They'd come down on a town hundreds strong, swarm off the boats, and take the place apart. They'd cut the heads off the men they killed, tie the heads together in pairs by their long, braided hair, and sling them around their necks like trophies. Fighters walking through the smoke wearing strings of human heads. Any local man they grabbed got one choice on the spot: pick up a blade and join, or get beaten to death where he stood. So everyone learned to just pay. Every trading ship on the South China Sea paid her a tax for the right to sail through it. Whole towns paid her to be left alone. She'd send word that her fleet was coming, and the silver would already be waiting on the dock when she arrived. She wasn't robbing the coast anymore. She owned it. And she kept her own 80,000 in line with a rule book harder than most real armies. Steal from the shared loot, she takes your head. Run from a fight, she takes your head. Force yourself on a captive woman, you die. Every time. That's how one person holds a force that size together without it tearing itself apart. So they decide she has to go, and they send a real fleet after her, not a patrol, 100 warships under a top admiral, built and crewed for one purpose: killing her. She doesn't wait for them. She hears one of her smaller fleets is pinned down, and she sails straight into the 100 ships to crack them open. The two fleets slam together off a cluster of islands, and the water turns into one long killing floor. Her junks ram the warships and lock on. Her people go over the rails in waves while the cannons are still firing point blank. Masts crash down, hulls split and roll over. Burning ships drift into other ships and spread the fire. and the water between the wrecks fills up with men trying not to drown. When the smoke finally clears, the 100-ship fleet is just gone. The admiral they sent to finish her is the one who got finished. She didn't survive the fleet built to kill her. She erased it. By now, she even had a British officer on her guns. His ship had been taken, and her pirates threw him in the dark hold of a junk for 4 months, where he stayed alive on rice and caterpillars with the rats. Then they found out he could work a cannon, so they hauled him up on deck and put him to work, loading and firing for her in her own attacks. The British leased a warship to come hunt her down too, but it mostly just sat in the harbor, and the one time their frigates ran into her fleet and opened fire, her ships barely bothered to shoot back. So the proudest navy on earth gave her a captured officer for a gunner and not much else. The people who actually came to fight her like they meant it were the Portuguese. Here's the difference. Everyone else came hunting a pirate. The Portuguese came to wage a war. The leaders of Macau armed a squadron, put it under a hard artillery officer named José Pinto Alcoforado, and sent it out with orders to break her, not chase her. And they brought the kind of weapons nobody on that sea had thrown at her before. Rifled cannons that could hit from far off. Shells that didn't just punch a hole, they burst and threw iron everywhere. Gun crews that held their discipline and kept their distance instead of brawling up close where her boarders ate people alive. And that flipped her greatest strength into a death trap. 1,800 ships sounds unbeatable until you try to move them all through a narrow strait at once. Her fleet jammed up. Junks bumping into junks, fouling each other, unable to turn. One enormous, slow, packed target sitting on the water. And the Portuguese just stood off at range and fired into the middle of it. Shells bursting over the decks, raining hot iron down on her men. Fires jumping ship to ship. And her crews couldn't do the one thing they always did. They couldn't close in and board, because every time they tried to row in, the Portuguese repositioned and blew them apart before they got a hook on anything. For the first time, her wave of boarders broke on a wall they couldn't reach. Day after day, it ground on, and she started doing something she'd never done. She started losing ships. 15 blasted apart in one stretch, then more. She threw 300 ships at them at once to settle it for good, and the Portuguese guns chewed straight through the charge and threw it back. Somebody had finally cracked the puzzle of how to beat her, and she could feel it. She still had her tricks. When they cornered her fleet in a bay and floated burning ships down on her to set the whole thing alight, her crews rowed out, hooked the fire ships, dragged them onto the beach, and chopped them up for firewood. And when the wind turned, she punched her armada straight out through the blockade. She could still pull off the impossible, but the math kept getting worse. Better guns, tighter discipline, and a coastline full of enemies who now smelled blood. The years of nobody being able to touch her were ending. And this is where almost any other story turns into a hanging. Here's where she does the smartest thing she ever did. She didn't wait to find out how it ends for pirates. She'd seen it. A noose on a dock, a head on a pole. So before they could grind her all the way down, she walked in and offered them a deal. Not a surrender on her knees, a deal, made by someone who still had a fleet big enough to make peace worth their while. And they took it, because beating her was costing them everything. And they knew that even now, cornering her fully might cost more than they had. So in 1810, the most wanted pirate alive talked her way into a full pardon. She kept her fortune. Her men walked free. Zhang Bao wasn't hanged. He was handed a commission and turned into a naval officer. She gave up the war and lost almost nothing that mattered. Then she just retired. She went home, opened a gambling house, ran it for the rest of her life, and died an old woman in her own bed around 1844. Rich, comfortable, never once caught. Think about that. 80,000 fighters, whole fleets erased. Even the Portuguese, with the best guns on the water, finally closing in on her, and she still walked off the sea on her own 2 feet with the money in her pocket. Almost every famous pirate you can name died young, in a fight or on the end of a rope. She read the board better than all of them, folded at the exact right moment, and won. A girl with nothing, born on the water, who ran the largest pirate empire in human history, and then beat the one ending every other pirate got. And most people have never even heard her name.